In the trembling silence before the world awakens, a storm older than memory coils through the unseen corridors of the human heart, demanding to be acknowledged before it devours the unwary. Tonight, you are not merely watching a message. You are stepping into a battlefield where ancient forces lean over the borders of your thoughts, studying every hesitation for a breach they can exploit, every weakness they can turn into a doorway, every doubt they can convert into territory, every silence they can twist into an invitation. The question erupts with apocalyptic gravity. Does the solitary act that many insist is harmless actually open a spiritual gate? And if it opens, what crosses that threshold? When the imagination is repeatedly enthroned as ruler of the night. Picture the secret chamber where prayer once lived, now dimmed by the cycle of surrender that returns, again like a tide refusing to retreat. Imagine Scripture not as a collection of verses, but as a tactical map of conflicts. Proverbs warning of seductive paths that consume the unwary, Matthew 5:28. Revealing lust not as a mere feeling, but as a flame that shapes destinies. When you feed the mind with vivid fantasies, you are not simply entertaining a thought. You are constructing corridors where unseen presences may walk. Each image replayed, each moment yielded, chisels a doorway in the soul's architecture. And after the act, have you noticed the spiritual fatigue that settles like smoke? The prayers that lose force? The courage that dissolves into dust? Psychology may call it habit. Biology may call it impulse, but Scripture calls it warfare. Yet this truth is not meant to crush the heart. It is meant to awaken it. For what is opened can be closed. What is fed can be silenced. What is enthroned can be overthrown by a will aligned with the voice of God. Genesis warns of sin crouching at the door, but commands that you rule over it. James declares resistance as a weapon that forces darkness to flee. You are not powerless. You are simply unaware of the scale of the battle. And here lies the revelation. The patterns repeated in secret determine the spiritual authority you carry in moments of crisis, shaping your discernment, your resilience, your spiritual clarity. So listen, reclaim the gateways of your mind, fortify the hidden room with Scripture, reshape your habits, and step back into the territory that belongs to your spirit. Tell me in the comments, have you felt this invisible pull? This pattern that cycles with uncanny precision? Share your experience or your question, and let this place become a sanctuary of awakening. If this message stirred your spirit, subscribe now, activate notifications, and share this video so others can finally see the war shaping their nights. As you cross the threshold from revelation to confrontation, the atmosphere around you tightens, as if the unseen realm itself leans closer to observe your next decision. Part 2 leads you deeper into the territory where the battle is no longer abstract. It becomes personal. Here the struggle does not roar. It whispers. Temptation rarely appears as a storm. Instead, it arrives as a suggestion that feels familiar, almost comforting, a rhythm that echoes through the chambers of memory. And this is where its danger lies, the subtlety that turns repetition into bondage. Scripture often frames sin not as an explosion, but as a creeping influence, a vine that curls around the heart 1 inch at a time. When Paul warns in Galatians about desires warring against the spirit, he is describing this quiet infiltration, this slow reordering of inner priorities where impulses begin to overrule intention. Imagine standing in a vast hall of mirrors, each reflection representing a past moment of surrender. At first glance, they seem harmless, disconnected. But as you walk deeper, the reflections shift, aligning themselves into a corridor that leads to a single destination. This is how habit forms, gently, invisibly, shaping pathways in the mind long before the moment of action arrives. Lust does not strike suddenly. It is cultivated in the soil of unguarded thoughts. This is why 2 Corinthians 10 speaks of taking thoughts captive, because the true battle is won or lost before the body ever moves. The act itself is only the final echo of a conflict already decided in the imagination. Yet in this dark tension lies a fierce hope. The very fact that you feel the internal war means the spirit is alive within you, resisting the drift that would otherwise pull you silently into spiritual numbness. The heaviness you feel after falling is not merely guilt. It is evidence of a calling too great to be diluted by secret patterns. Psalm 32 describes the weight of hidden sin, but it also reveals the relief and clarity that flood the soul when truth is brought to the surface. Every moment of resistance strengthens a new pathway, a path not carved by impulse, but by intention, discipline, and alignment with God's voice. So pause and examine the battlefield within you. Where does the temptation truly begin? Which thoughts return with a precision that feels almost orchestrated? Comment below and share your reflection or your question. Your voice may be the breakthrough someone else needs. And if this journey is bringing clarity to your spirit, subscribe, activate notifications, and share this message so others can awaken to the war unfolding inside their silence. In this third chapter, the tension deepens as desire and divine purpose collide in a landscape shaped by unseen forces. The scene opens on a symbolic battlefield inside the mind, where impulses rise like shadowed figures testing weakened gates. Scripture resounds. Sin crouches at the door, and every private indulgence shifts that door open, inviting influences that drain clarity and discipline. The viewer is taken through corridors of thought lined with memories, fantasies, and decisions that seemed harmless but carved patterns with quiet precision. Here, masturbation is revealed not merely as a physical habit, but as a subtle vulnerability that shapes focus, spiritual sensitivity, and the ability to resist temptation. The narration challenges the audience. How many battles have you fought in silence? How many thresholds opened without noticing? Share your reflections below, for this inner war is far more common than most confess. The mind is portrayed as an ancient sanctuary, with towering arches and dim torches flickering along the walls. Each indulgence becomes a spark, casting distorted shadows that twist the natural order of the inner landscape. The script recalls biblical examples of private choices, leading to public consequences. Samson drifting from consecration long before defeat, David cultivating impulses that later erupted into crisis, and Esau trading destiny for a moment of satisfaction. These scenes remind viewers that hidden habits shape futures. The narration guides the audience through their own internal chambers, urging recognition that repeated actions, especially those performed in solitude, reshape identity, relationships, and spiritual clarity. Every habit becomes a sculptor, shaping strength or eroding it. The third movement intensifies as a neon storm sweeps through the sanctuary, scattering glowing symbols and dark silhouettes that represent impulses gaining ground. The narrative asks, have you noticed how one indulgence often leads to another? How the mind grows restless and more easily swayed? The script reveals how repetition weakens spiritual authority, dulls prayer, and fragments focus. Purity stands as a shield, self-control as a forged weapon, and each act of surrender cracks the walls meant to guard the soul. The tension rises, urging the audience to acknowledge the stakes. This is not about shame, but about dominion and destiny. A radiant path then breaks through the chaos, symbolizing awakening and renewal. The narrator affirms that while temptation persists, transformation remains possible. Thresholds opened can be shut, inner halls restored, and long-standing habits dismantled. This chapter closes with a decisive cliffhanger, preparing viewers for the final revelations. The audience is urged to subscribe, activate notifications, and stand ready for the next chapter, where the deepest truths and the path to full restoration await. In this final chapter, the inner battlefield that once pulsed with darkness is suddenly exposed by a rising, decisive light. The viewer stands before the truth that private habits carve foundations. Far deeper than emotion, they shape spiritual structure itself. The narration reveals that secrecy is the soil where certain sins strengthen, not because God rejects human frailty, but because repeated indulgence trains the heart to seek comfort in a counterfeit refuge. A massive gate of luminous gold appears, trembling as old chains begin to fracture. Here the audience is confronted with a sobering question. How many small choices have quietly shaped your spiritual direction? How many times has silence allowed a habit to grow unnoticed? Share your reflections below, for this is a moment of decisive awakening. The mind unfolds as a hall of mirrors, each one reflecting either clarity or distortion. Some surfaces gleam with truth. Others warp the image, shaped by impulses fed in secret. As the viewer walks through this hall, each step stabilizes or shatters a reflection, symbolizing the transformation happening within. Biblical examples rise with sharp relevance. Joseph fleeing temptation, Paul reminding believers that the body is a temple, and Jesus declaring purity as a path to divine vision. These aren't distant lessons, they are active strategies. The narration urges the viewer to examine their own inner mirrors and recognize which ones reflect who they are meant to be. This section heightens the tension not to condemn, but to guide toward renewal and dominion, A luminous storm forms above, no longer chaotic as before, but reorganizing itself into patterns of strength and purpose. Shadow figures representing old impulses attempt one last surge. Yet the fortress of the mind now glows with reinforced walls. Scripture appears as radiant letters sealing former fractures, restoring authority where surrender once existed. Prayer sharpens, focus steadies, purpose aligns. The viewer is called to recognize the shift happening within and to comment how this truth reframes their own journey, for such testimony may lift someone else from silence. The conclusion rises with cinematic triumph. A crown of brilliant light descends as the battlefield transforms into a restored sanctuary. The narrator affirms that freedom is not distant. It begins with a single decisive step taken today. The internal landscape, once fractured, becomes whole, signaling that God redeems every area willingly surrendered to Him. As the vision fades, the final charge echoes with gravity. Subscribe, activate notifications, and share this message so others still wrestling in secrecy may discover the same path toward clarity, strength, and spiritual restoration.